We now know tonight 5 confirmed tornadoes across Ohio early this morning, 2 of them here in the Miami Valley. Thankfully, no major injuries tonight. Also, the National Weather Service confirming an EF1 tornado hitting Riverside in the Montgomery County area, moving into Greene County, and then an EF2 hitting the Clark County area, an EF1 hitting the London and even Hilliard area, and an EF2 hitting Blacklick. The National Weather Service has been out all day surveying the damage at all of those locations. Now, we do have team coverage for you tonight. Our crews are spread across the Miami Valley covering the hardest hit areas. It's the first storm of its kind this year to leave behind devastating damage. We first begin our team coverage with Jenna Lee Bork, who is live near a part of Springfield in Clark County that was hit by that EF2 tornado. So Jenna Lee, what did you see today?
There are at least 4 to 5 homes here on Ridge Road across from a farm field with devastating damage. Others didn't get hit as hard, but regardless of the damage, this neighborhood is feeling the power of what Mother Nature can do.
It's a nature call. We can't beat that.
As the sun set on these homes sitting on the hill, or what was left of them, reality set in for those who live here about what the early morning hours brought.
Happened around between 4:30, 5 o'clock this morning. Big wind hit our wall. Then 5 seconds later, roof is gone. All the ceiling came top of us. And we're fortunate that we're on the blanket, so nobody got hurt.
The power of a tornado that had shifted from an EF1 to an EF2 was felt by many on Ridge Road in Springfield. Luckily, no one suffered serious injuries.
All we try to do is find our shoes and put it on, try to be safe, and everybody in our family is safe. That's why I'm smiling, right? I didn't get hurt. My fiance didn't get hurt. Our kids didn't get hurt. Our dog is still safe in my car.
Governor Mike DeWine walking through the rubble today while families were trying to salvage what they could, commenting on this couple's mindset during such a tough time.
Very, very traumatic, but you know, they have a very good attitude, and they said, look, we're both alive and we've got a place to stay tonight. And our heart goes out to them, and the other houses and the other families that have lived through this.
DeWine says that Clark County EMS tells him they've had multiple calls of people reaching out that want to help those impacted.
You know, the thing that is always impressive to me is how people come together to help their neighbors.
Governor DeWine says anyone who needs anything or who has been impacted by these tornadoes should not hesitate to reach out to the county they live in, adding that the state has a close working relationship with county officials. Back to you in studio.
Jenna Lee, thank you. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base also dealing with some damage to its buildings and aircrafts tonight after that EF1 tornado blew through the area. Gwyneth Falloon live in Riverside, just down the road from the base. So Gwen, there's a bit of damage in that area as well.
That's right, Elise. I'm here at Airway Shopping Center. That's near the tornado's initial touchdown site. That was at the intersection of Airway and Spinning Road. Now, the majority of the damage here has already been cleaned up. I was out here earlier. There wasn't too much damage. The majority of it was here at this big lots behind me, but it has been boarded up and actually reopened this evening around 6. The more significant damage, though, was just a few minutes away over at the Air Force Base.
Best takeaway is that no personnel were injured. We had no reported injuries.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, thankful no one was hurt in Wednesday's early morning tornado. Colonel Travis Pond saying they were fairly lucky. A storage and restoration hangar dating back to the end of World War II took the hardest hit.
Although the damage to the external structure of the building is pretty severe, the aircraft inside are relatively undamaged.
An interceptor plane, a F-104 Starfighter, was also heavily damaged, but David Tillotson with the museum says it was on its way out.
The aircraft on the tarmac behind me, or basically on the concrete behind me, are all things that were slated for disposal. So while they got bounced around a little bit and it looks pretty impressive, the answer is these were being scheduled for pickup by the Defense Logistics Agency for recycling.
Fortunately, nothing of too high value was lost, but they say it will still take weeks, if not longer, to repair all the damages.
The building behind you is probably going to take a while. So these are also historic hangars, in addition to being severely damaged. It's a historic hangar, so restoration will be more challenging.
And as they continued to clean up the mess left behind, they thanked those who worked tirelessly to make sure they could do so safely.
Really proud of our first responders, our CE folks, security forces, and fire who were out here immediately, well before anyone arrived, to get to site safe.
Now, the museum is maintaining their normal hours despite the destruction and repairs. They were actually open today, and the base says its normal day-to-day operations have not been impacted. Back to you.
Gwen, thank you. The Montgomery County tornado touching down here near Airway and Spinning Road. Our viewer, Larry, actually captured this video where you can see a huge tree down on the ground. And it then hit Fairborn. You can see the trampoline picked up by strong winds thrown on the roof of the home. The metal was able to break through the roof and do some damage to the siding and gutters as well. It then continued to rip off most of the roof here at this apartment building on Zinc Road. The tornado then moved into Yellow Springs, causing downed power lines, which then caused road closures. Those power outages then led to Yellow Springs City Schools being closed for the day. And a live look at the AES outage map right now. You can see at this time, most of the power has been restored to customers in our area. Earlier today, more than 10,000 customers had their lights turned off. 67 customers are still without power tonight. Well, the Miami Valley has a history of tornadoes, and with all the damage they can cause, insurance is extremely important. Kasha Hancock spoke with Wagner Insurance Agency, brings us everything you need to know to protect yourself.
Intense thunderstorms and confirmed tornadoes hitting the Miami Valley have affected many homeowners. And while insurance can protect you when your property is unexpectedly damaged, there are things you need to know. Mike Wagner, president of Wagner Insurance Agency, says insurance claims always have a triggering event behind them, like tornadoes. When you need coverage, Wagner urges people to contact their insurance company to put them in contact with a claims adjuster who will then adjust all their losses, including helping them determine a deductible. Then the company will pay for the remainder of the damages. Wagner says with the recent tornadoes over the last 10 years, you might see insurance companies increase deductibles to about 2% rather than deductibles of $1,000. But even with that increase, it's still the best thing people can do to protect themselves.
Yes, they would be the ones paying for those damages themselves. What would that result in? Very likely it would cause a bankruptcy in many cases, because we're not talking about small assets here. Oftentimes a home is the largest asset in somebody's portfolio.
Here's some things to do before a storm hits to make it easier if you have to make a claim. Gather important documents like birth certificates, passports, social security cards, and insurance documents. Make sure you keep it in a place that you can get to easily in a disaster. Also, create an inventory of your belongings. This includes things like furniture, jewelry, and electronics. This will help you stay organized if you have to make a claim quickly. Back to you.
And let's take a look at the tornadoes that touched down right here in the Miami Valley, and more details about their path as well as their strength. So Montgomery and Greene, that was an EF1 tornado. The maximum winds were 100 miles per hour with that. And it did have a width of 200 yards and a path of 2.4 miles. Now, the more impressive tornado here was Clark, Madison County, as it was an EF2 tornado, had winds of 120 miles per hour. The width of 500 yards, but the biggest difference here is the path of 18.7 miles. So this stayed on the ground for almost 19 miles, causing, of course, a path of destruction along with it. Again, damage reported across a lot of the Miami Valley, not just with those storms as well. We also had some straight line wind damage associated with some of these storms too. So things are quiet out there right now. Our active weather is now off to the east. It's cold. We're in the 20s. I'll talk about when we'll finally warm back up coming up here in just a bit.
In addition to the 2 tornadoes that hit the Miami Valley, the National Weather Service confirmed 3 others actually hit central Ohio this morning as well. An EF2 hit Blacklick in Franklin County. You can see this family's home here, now without a roof, walls, even a garage. And in that garage was where Philip Basham was just minutes before the tornado ripped through.
And I just broke down. But it's not the stuff. It's literally like, I'm here. And that 3 to 5 minute gap of time where I could have easily been in the garage when this happened, 3 minutes prior. Or
also in Franklin County tonight, an EF1 blowing through Hilliard. Steve Levine continues our team coverage with the path of destruction.
This neighborhood near Hilliard hit hard, siding like this, thrown all over the neighborhood when this storm went through. And look right behind me, you can see huge trees ripped from their roots. And right behind, that is a garage that was yanked from its foundation and slammed into a next door neighbor's garage. We also found insulation in trees, a traffic sign that was blown from a main street and fell between two homes. Repair crews already here in this quiet community. Neighbors say they are thankful everyone walked away unharmed. Here in Hilliard, Steve Levine for Dayton 24/7 Now.
Well, the Miami Valley holds centuries of history in a fight to free slaves from the South. We're going to walk you through the stories of the Underground Railroad starting right here in Ohio.
And I'm tracking this cold weather. I'll let you know how long that will last. That's coming up. Here's a live look from our Eco Plumber Skycam. You're watching Dayton 24/7 Now.
Ohio played a critical role in the fight against slavery. It was instrumental, I should say, in the Underground Railroad, leaving behind centuries of history. Melena Brown explains the role the rivers and significant cities played in our area.
Right here behind me, where the Ohio River flows, was the separation between slavery and a path to freedom. It's estimated that around 40,000 freedom seekers crossed these waters, leaving a deep-rooted history of the Underground Railroad right here in Ohio. I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. Now I was free. There was such a glory over everything. I felt like I was in heaven. Words from Harriet Tubman that still resonate for elementary student Stella Carter.
I like learning about history because I think that it's important for people that haven't learned about it to learn about history and not judge other people that are not the same color as them.
It took centuries to reach this point of reflection. The first slave ship arrived in Virginia in 1619. African Americans risked their lives by trying to escape the South, many heading north to the first free state they could find.
Ohio is the biggest underground railroad network there is because of the Ohio River.
Novella Nimmo from the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati says the river was known as the borderland, and it made the Queen City a safe haven, considering Kentucky was still a slave state.
Right on the river, you had Little Africa, where we're at, where the bingo stadium was at, was Little Bucktown. 5th Street all the way down was Big Bucktown.
Many of the people who lived in the borderland acted as conductors of the Underground Railroad, living and traveling all through Ohio, moving thousands of African Americans home to home, some heading all the way to Canada, some establishing roots along the way.
That's why you had the African American communities too, to protect you. You know, you're not coming in this community and taking nobody out.
Despite Ohio being a free state, it was still hostile for Black people. African Americans had to follow Black laws. Freedom papers were required, costing $500, nearly $20,000 today. You also needed a costly work permit, and you had to pay taxes on your children. This led many freedom seekers to want to go further north to towns like Springboro.
There are no railways here and there are no riverways here, so it made it more difficult for bounty hunters to get to Springboro.
Christine Britton with the Springboro Historical Society says the town was settled in the late 18th century. The founder, Jonathan Wright, was a Quaker and an abolitionist. Wright's home was a stop along the route, which featured tunnels and a hidden room in the attic.
We believe between 2,500 and 4,000 freedom seekers came through Springboro.
Conductors and freedom seekers faced fines, jail, or even in some cases, death. This meant all movements relied heavily on trust.
You would know me as your next stop, and I would know the next person, but you would not know the person after me, right? So we want to keep this as secret as possible.
The goal was to travel at least 20 miles each night. During the day, freedom seekers hid in the secret areas of homes to avoid bounty hunters. Once it got dark, it was on to the next stop. For many, that was Troy.
Troy became kind of a hotbed or a central hub because of the canal, and also because that as they made their way further north with the goal of sometimes getting to Canada, Troy was at least within proximity to give them hope to be able to get to freed area.
Shane Carter with the Lincoln Community Center says there are at least 7 known Underground Railroad stops in Troy, many in downtown, including the First Presbyterian Church.
The importance of the church is not only that they believed in abolition and they believed in freeing slaves, but there's still proof there today of the Underground Railroad. And we've taken children down there before. The tunnel actually goes all the way underneath the sanctuary, headed towards the north.
Another landmark was the old Troy Courthouse, now being restored by the Troy Historic Preservation Alliance.
The courthouse was also used for the registration of African Americans during the so-called Black Laws of 1804 and 1807.
Whether it's Troy, Springboro, or Cincinnati, the history of the Underground Railroad lives on through the fresh perspective of kids like Stella and the stories of previous generations.
A history not learned is a history that's going to be bound to repeat.
For Dayton 24/7 Now, I'm Melena Brown.
Taking a live look right now from our Eco Plumber Sky Cam. Things a lot calmer out there. Let's send it over to Chief Meteorologist Natalie Walters.
A lot calmer and a lot colder. So a lot of weather happening today. Tornadoes touching down. We had, of course, 2 confirmed across the area, and then of course just severe storms to start off our day, as well as record high temperatures to start off our day. 66 degrees high temperature for today, That's a record, surpassing the previous record of 64 set back in 1972 as well as 2016. So we broke a record today, so it's hard to believe that with a record high temperature, we're hanging out in the 20s right now. Temperatures have fallen significantly. With our cold front now off to the east, we got a couple of snow showers lingering for our northeastern counties. This cold front making a big impact, not just for us, but many places across the U.S. So overnight, we're going to drop into the 20s, eventually rebounding into the 40s tomorrow afternoon. That will still be cold, but notice lots of sunshine in the forecast, so it's looking good really all day tomorrow. Cold but sunny and not as windy as what we had today because it was pretty breezy. Friday, starting out pretty chilly, but Friday evening we do have showers that begin to develop across the area. We'll see scattered showers around the area. Not going to be looking at any heavier downpours with this. No thunderstorms in the forecast. I think we'll get up to about 50 degrees even before we start to see temperatures climb even more. So slowly starting to climb, but by next week, I think we could see some 70s. Right now I'm keeping upper 60s in the forecast for our Sunday and our Monday time frame, so it's looking pretty good then. So shaping up nicely over these next several days with quieter weather with the exception for some showers on Friday. But coming up, I will have a look at our 7-day forecast and talk about what we're expecting into next week.
Illinois is now the latest state removing former President Donald Trump from the primary presidential ballot, joining moves from Colorado and Maine. It's involving the 14th Amendment's ban on insurrectionists holding public office. In early February, the Supreme Court heard arguments on Colorado's ballot case. Justices' decisions will set a precedent that all states must now follow. And speaking of the Supreme Court tonight, it's announced it will hear the federal election interference case against former President Donald Trump. The court will hear arguments in April. A ruling on Trump's immunity claim would follow. That means the 2024 Republican presidential frontrunner might not go to trial until the thick of general election campaign. The federal election interference case is one of several criminal and civil cases Trump is currently facing. And we now want to give you a live look tonight from our nation's capital here behind me, where Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell announced he's stepping down as Republican leader after nearly 40 years. The 82-year-old has served in the Senate since 1985 and as Republican leader since 2007. McConnell was the longest-serving Senate leader in U.S. history. Tonight, new photos of the moon surface have been released from the spacecraft that made its landing last week. A look at those lunar images next. You're watching Dayton 24/7 now.